Hi, this is Shauna, the CEO and founder of Fuel Talent. One of the things I have loved most in my 25-year recruiting career has always been the stories that people tell. Stories of leadership, career choices, company ideas, and team building. My inspiration for starting the What Fuels You podcast came from being curious about people's lives and wanting to help share their stories. What path brought them to this place? What decisions did they make that led to failures and successes? Who influenced those decisions, and what lessons were learned along the way? I hope you enjoy the What Fuels You podcast. Henry Albrecht, CEO of Limeade, is today's guest on the What Fuels You podcast. Limeade is a software company founded in 2006 that elevates the employee experience and helps build great places to work. The idea for Limeade was ignited from his time at Intuit, realizing that there should be a software system that can measurably improve your overall well-being in the same way that Intuit measurably improves your financial well-being. Henry is also on the board of directors of Cause, a basketball player, a Seattle native, a husband, and a father. Welcome, Henry.
Thanks. Good to be here. You do have a good podcast voice.
Oh, thanks. That's been the one feedback. I'm like, yay. That's my ninja skill, the podcast voice. I think it sounds weird with these headphones, though, right? Okay, we're starting with rapid fire. You ready for me?
I'm ready.
Okay, since you're a baller, serious hooper, who's your favorite NBA player of all time?
I think I got to go with Xavier McDaniel, the X-Man from the old Sonics days.
Nice.
Yeah.
Old school. I hope you
keeping
saved
it
some of
real.
your
Number
Sonic
34
stuff.
is my favorite number for that reason.
Sweet. What one word would you use to describe your leadership style?
Optimistic.
Nice. We got to be. 2006. You're like pushing
I have
in
some
there.
preachers back, if you go back far enough in my family tree, so I think I like to evangelize and proselytize a brighter future.
Yeah, love it. Are you an introvert or an extrovert?
Extrovert, 100%.
100% extrovert.
Yes.
What's your favorite way to relax? Rapid fire.
I know I'm not very rapid fire. I guess I'm kind of an athlete, so I like to play golf or tennis or basketball or, go on long walks or whatever. Anything that gets me physically active is good.
Yeah. And what are you currently reading to stay informed, like business-wise?
Well, first of all, I read probably more novels than
More for
business
fun.
books because I do business, 50, 60 plus hours every week.
Yeah.
I'm reading a novel called The Overstory, which is awesome. It's a novel about trees and their role in the world.
Cool. So you're reading a lot for fun.
Yeah, more for fun.
Yeah.
I read workbooks, but they tend to be more about psychology and how people's brains work and how they think than how to run a P&L or grow a sales and marketing team.
Yeah. And you can apply that in your business. I love Limeade, love, love, love. And I'm super psyched to have you here. But we're going to take it back from before you started Limeade because you have a really cool background. I love that you're from Seattle. And I have the privilege of saying that I've known you for a long time, although you know how in that way that like the senior doesn't know the sophomore. I think I was like a freshman and you were older. And you're the youngest of three boys?
Four.
4 boys.
Yes, 3 older brothers.
Yeah. And so were you always kind of this driven extrovert or did you blossom at a certain age?
Well, I think having 3 older brothers means you have to fight for your dinner. You have to be a little bit louder and more pushy and more out there just to survive and compete for, attention or food or scraps with 3 big brothers around. So I think that certainly helped.
I know that you did the private school thing. Was that from early ages or just in middle school and high school?
Yeah, I went to private school, middle school, and high school, mainly because my mom wanted me to, and turned out to be great. I have great friends. I'm sure there's all manner of schools that would have been great for me. I just feel super blessed and grateful for all the educational access I've had. And on the other side of that coin, it would be cool if everybody had access to that quality of education. So
completely.
That's a whole thing.
Is that something that you're kind of passionate about?
I'm passionate about giving back. I think you saw on the profile that I'm on the board of this company, Cause, which is a social giving platform. It's all about democratizing giving and getting people to make giving more of a habit. So something you can do in an app in 10 seconds if you see a charity you like in any field, just giving $10 or $20 or $3 or whatever feels right at the time.
Mm-hmm. Where did you learn that value?
So education and education related to giving has always been kind of the number one value that both my parents, said. My dad was pretty successful in business, but always says, you're never going to get a penny from me, but you'll always have education. And
I love that.
So you can kind of sort out the rest. And I think that turned out to be a really great value.
Mm-hmm. So I also read in getting ready for this that both of your parents are from the Midwest. How did they end up coming out to Seattle, and how did that shape you as far as them being from the Midwest?
Yes, semi-true, actually. My mom's family came from the Midwest, came from Iowa, actually, but she was born in Seattle. So we're
she's born in
actually old school Seattle, but my dad's family is from Iowa, and he grew up on a farm in Iowa. His dad passed away when he was quite young, and so he was the man of the family with two younger siblings on a farm. When he couldn't drive the tractor, he couldn't reach the pedals.
Wow.
And so I think he had a strong work ethic, to say the least.
For sure.
But also, not really into ego and not really into blowing your own horn. So I probably have run afoul of that ethic a few times as a hustler and entrepreneur, where you have to. But,
yeah, you gotta be able to do that. Someone's got to promote you, right? And so you're the youngest of all these boys. Are any of them also in business?
Yes. My oldest brother, John, is retired, lives on the East Coast, and seems to be happy traveling around and keeping himself busy. Both my brother Carl and my brother Rich live in Seattle, and both also are CEOs of their own companies.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
All sorts of drive there.
Yeah.
Where did that come from? Mom, dad, both?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it was a competitive environment growing up. I mean, I remember playing basketball in the driveway with my brother Rich, where we would play to 1,000, and we'd get to like 108 to 105, and we'd get into a fight. And then, we'd end up rolling around
to 1,000?
Yeah. And then you roll around on the concrete, in the rain in Seattle, and then you come in a little bit bloodied and dirty, and mom says, "What's going on? No basketball for a week." And then you just start over from zero again. I think we all grew up in that sort of environment. Yes.
I like to ask these types of questions because selfishly as a mom, I like to get little nuggets from other people of how they were raised and how you can say, like, when you take 4, you're like, oh, one of them's going to be kind of a derelict. But it sounds like you got 4 for 4 that are pretty focused and driven. Are you all...
Oh, no. We can't... I mean... You can't skip the derelict phase that we all went through.
Of course, you got to, though. You got to. What was your derelict phase?
I would just say we all made it through pretty well, out of the derelict phase into adulthood.
Was there a rebel phase that you went through?
I was always such an angel.
Nobody can see Henry right now, but he's got like a big twinkle in his eye, a big smile. Always such an angel. So yes. You started after high school at Rice University. How'd you choose Rice?
Correct. Rice was the best school I got into. So I always think that's a good place to start.
You had some disappointment of schools that you didn't get into?
I mean, Rice was a great school. I loved going to Rice. It was super fun and educational and great. As it turns out, I wanted to play basketball and I wasn't quite sure. And then I realized down there sitting out a year and not playing that I really wanted to play. So I ended up transferring to Claremont McKenna College near LA for my last 3 years.
Was any of that a regret of like,
No.
hey, I wish I had gone right away to Claremont or like a smaller school?
I mean, you've seen me. I'm a 6'5" power forward. It's not like the NBA scouts were drooling over me. So I just knew that, get a great education. If you get to play sports, intramural or varsity or whatever on the side, that's great. And I love playing basketball. I consider myself a triple major because I studied English literature and economics, but I consider basketball kind of equal and on par with those two because I think I learned every bit as much from that as I learned from the classroom.
What would you say you took away, and did you have any coaches or teachers along the way that kind of influenced you?
I remember having a coach in high school who was trying to talk me out of Division I sports because he said, it's a full-time job. And would you rather have a D1 ride where it's a 40, 50-hour a week job at an okay academic institution, or would you rather go to the best school you can go to and get the best education you can? Because it's such a fallacy that kids believe that they'll go make millions of dollars. And I think the exception
I wish someone had said that to me.
proves the
like
rule,
that.
right? I mean, there are people that, I'm spending some time with the UW men's basketball team. There's definitely some NBA players on that team, and they're amazing athletes and great kids. But I think for every one of those, there's 1,000 high school athletes whose parents think that they're going to be the ticket to the future. And, I'm not saying lose your dream. I'm just saying
it's
broaden
such a fine
your
balance.
horizon a little bit.
It's such a fine balance as a parent, because my son, well, now he's going to be 15, but when he was like 10, he was 100%, I will be playing basketball for Duke. And I was like, how do I break it down for you, baby? Like, I think the chances are, but it's like, keep your dreams. But now he's lacrosse. But it is pretty interesting.
I mean, I think if you saw Isaiah Thomas growing up, who played at UW, who was 5'11", you might have said he'll never, he was 5'11", bro. You're not going to make it. Then again, he was scoring 30 points a game for the Celtics for a while there. So
yeah. Do you follow basketball closely right now?
I still follow NBA basketball.
And you still play?
I quit playing last year
because you got injured.
I made it to 49. I figured that's a pretty good age.
Well, everyone I know of our generation and our age that's still playing, so many injuries. I mean, so many injuries.
I'm a big believer in preventive care, and I've seen so many friends go down, and it was taking me 3 or 4 days just to kind of walk straight after playing, so the writing was on the wall for sure.
And you probably couldn't go out and just play like halfway. You got to be like, I'm either playing or I'm not playing.
That's correct.
So what are you doing right now to stay in shape and like keep your energy?
I do a lot of walking during work, so I'll put on my headset and just go do meetings while I'm walking.
On like a treadmill desk?
No, I just walk outside, walk through. I work in Bellevue,
That's cool.
You might have heard of it. It's a beautiful suburb, leafy. I also am starting to get back into tennis, which I haven't played since I was a kid, which is quite fun. A little bit of golf.
Super fun. Yeah. That's awesome. I've had a few people ask me for walking meetings, but they don't tell me until I get there.
Yeah.
And I'm like, with a
shoes.
woman, you got to be like, can you wear some like flats or something? I've had that happen a couple times. I'm like walking in cobblestones. Like, give a girl a little warning.
Well, this is a heads up. If you ever come out to Limeade, wear comfortable shoes.
Okay. I think that's really smart. We got a treadmill desk in our office, and I look over and everyone else is using it, and I don't use it, but I need to. So everyone keeps running shoes.
You need some sort of...
I know. I need to. So you did awesome in school. You studied economics and literature, thinking maybe you wanted to be what?
Well, I started out as a literature major because that was really what I loved to do. I loved reading, writing. That was by far my favorite. And I think I loved it so much that I took all the classes and was basically done with the major my junior year halfway through. And I started thinking, maybe I want a job someday because I don't think I have the patience to be a school teacher. And, being a novelist seems like a risky lifestyle choice with,
the odds,
the drinking and suicide rates and all that stuff. So, and as an extrovert, I thought, maybe I'll use my left brain a little as well. So I got an econ, what they call a dual major. And my first job, well, we'll get into this, but actually I played basketball for a year in Europe after school.
So I read this in Portugal.
In Portugal.
I just went to Portugal. I loved it. Lisbon.
It's amazing.
It's gorgeous. It's the coolest.
We just went back this summer for a vacation.
I was there this summer too. It's so awesome.
Yeah, it's a great place to visit. I recommend it.
So how does that come about? Like if someone's listening and they're like, how do I get to go to play basketball in Portugal for a year?
Go play hoops at a small college and go to play pro summer leagues, and someone will find you if you're good.
And who are you matched up with when you're in this type of team? Like, who are you playing with when you're in Portugal?
The teams are built with they're allowed 2 estrangeros, or 2 foreigners per team. Most of those will be American, sometimes Brazilian, or Angolan, or, from a different place.
Wow. And who
I
do you
love
play
the Portuguese
against?
people. They're not known for being super tall.
No, they're not.
So, great Cristiano Ronaldo, one of the greatest soccer players in the world. But basketball is maybe, it's helpful to be 6'5" or 6'6" when you go over there.
And so were you doing that thinking this is just my kind of the equivalent of doing Sun Valley for a year? Or were like, this is my entree to the NBA?
No. I never once thought that I would be an NBA player. It was fun. It was a great way to spend a year.
Yeah. And you would
I had a chance to go back to another country the next year, and then that team went bankrupt.
Oh.
And so I decided maybe this is the writing on the wall.
Yeah.
And I need a real job. So that's when actually I used my to get back to my econ degree, I took a job in the Bay Area doing statistical and economic consulting.
Yeah.
And I did that for 4 years.
I read this about you that you were like, I didn't really love the kind of get paid for my time model of consulting.
Yeah, it seemed a little bit strange to think about the hours you work as the metric of your pay and your performance. I billed tons of hours. I was always happy to work hard and work long. But I saw some what I would consider slightly iffy motivations. I think there can be times in consulting where you've already sold the job and maybe the job's done, but you have 100,000 or 200,000 more billing, in the project.
Yeah.
And so you end up, staying late and doing overtime and creating 500 charts that'll probably never be looked at or used.
Yeah.
And
it's definitely
and
a flawed
also,
model.
It's up or out, which is fine because I was moving up, but it's also it felt like it could be a little bit of a stronger culture. We'll say this, I had some great mentors and bosses. So all in all, it was fine, but it was enough time to help me realize that career wasn't a good career for me. There was a woman named Deborah Aaron who was a microeconomics professor at Northwestern and a manager that I really looked up to, and she was great. And she also helped me understand that maybe that wasn't where I should be headed as my path. And
so then you made a complete switch.
Well, then I went back to business school.
Yeah.
I went to Kellogg at Northwestern because I was already out there doing the work in the Chicago area. And it was a perfect school for me because I was kind of jaded on business and jaded on the business model. And yet I didn't know what else to do. And it was a great school. And it really reignited, I guess, my sense of teamwork and passion, and maybe taught me for the first time that you get to kind of architect your own path through life and that you don't just follow in the steps that are laid out by some weird expectations society has for you.
Yeah. Are you mentoring other people now? And what's your kind of overall take on going back for an MBA?
I am mentoring people at various levels. I'd like to think I'm a mentor to my kids, but I think probably a little bit more on the professional side and some college sports folks as well. I would say if you love learning, then you should pursue learning, whether that's going back for an MBA or a PhD or a master's or on-the-job learning or putting yourself in a role that's uncomfortable or Peace Corps. To me, I have always loved learning, and to me, that was a great opportunity that I had, fortunate enough to be able to afford to go to an MBA. I would recommend it for anyone who wants a business career.
Yeah, for sure. And so did Intuit recruit you out of there? Is
You
that how
could
you
say
got
they
to
recruited.
Intuit?
That would make me feel good to think they recruited me.
Well, how did you go about it? You begged.
Yeah, so they have great career placement offices at most of these business schools, but I knew I wanted to be in high tech on the West Coast. And
why? What were you kind of fueled by at that time?
I love marketing and technology. That was marketing is probably my true passion out of business school because I love the idea of building a brand, and I think there's so much psychology in marketing. It's really it's applied psychology, and I have a real passion for the psychology of how people think and how things work.
Why they do the things they do. Yeah.
And, there are very few tech companies at the time, and technology was obviously an exploding thing, .com boom, literally exploding. But there were very few companies that I think had the concept of brand at their core, and Intuit was one of them. Their founder, Scott Cook, was a P&G brand manager before he started the company, and I think they had that ethos as well. So, although I'd like to think they recruited me, I applied, I begged, and I did all the hustle things that candidates should do that sometimes they don't do.
What are some of those things?
As a recruiter?
Yeah.
Like, get to know every single person you possibly can there, learn 100 stories about what it's like to be there. Find people who can influence the process and have them all recommend you if they like you.
Yeah.
So
and
a lot of hustle.
What words, I guess, would you use to describe the culture there? And did you bring any of those qualities into Limeade when you started it?
I think it's very values-driven, team-oriented, supportive. I remember having walks with various bosses of mine, Craig Carlson, Peter Karpus, Laurel Lee, Allison Mnookin, where they would just take me out and we would go walk around campus and talk about business problems and ideas. And I felt like I had great mentors. I would say I've stolen almost everything that I learned there. I think the values-driven thing is probably the most, where they they got together as an organization, documented and wrote down all of their own values, and they flow those through everything they do. And that's what I wanted to bring a very intentional culture to the company that I was part of.
I know that you got back to Seattle and worked at Bocata, right? How did that happen? And why did you decide to do that?
Well, in case you haven't heard, the Bay Area can be expensive.
Yes. I was there maybe around the same time as you. I don't even know.
On one income as well. My wife was at the time staying home with our kids and pregnant with our second child, Josie. Yeah. And it was the right time for our family to move back to Seattle. So we planned on moving back, and I had always felt like maybe a little more of a bent towards entrepreneurialism than big company.
Is she from here? Is your wife from here? From Seattle?
She's from Kirkland.
Yeah.
Now known
as
Woodinville.
You can call that Seattle.
Now known as Woodinville.
Really?
She fights for Kirkland.
Area. She's from this area.
And we moved back mainly for family reasons, but I wanted to work at a smaller company so that I could learn a little more of the venture-backed vibe. And it was a venture-backed company, and it was extremely high growth, and there were a lot of things to learn from it.
Yeah. And so when you started Limeade,
yes,
this is part of what inspired me to even start a podcast, is that I became obsessed with how I built that podcast. I don't know if you've listened to it, but it really just takes people back into those first, few months. It's an idea. Like, how do you even go about it? How did you come up with the name?
Yeah. So I was going through a stint in my life where I was showing up every day at work and working, long hours, 50, 60, 70 hours, some travel, and a high stress job. I was a VP of product at this other company, and I became disconnected from that company, whether it was values disconnect or whatever reason. And I found myself in this position where I was arguing with my wife more than I needed to. I wasn't as positive and
just energized,
polite and awesome and energized as I should be. I was getting a rash on my face. I was like literally physically getting a rash from what I would consider stress.
Keep away from me.
And I had it's healed now. Thank God.
I'm kidding. That many years later.
And one morning I looked in the mirror and I just didn't recognize the person I was looking at. It was just so gray and flat, and that's not what I'm about. That's not what I want to be known as. And I realize now that I know the science of how this happens, is I was going through what I would call burnout. Burnout is a kind of a path that when people go through it, it starts with depletion and exhaustion. It goes through some cynicism and kind of lack of belief that you can make a difference. And it ends with you being disengaged. And I think that's pretty much where I was. And so I quit my job and I took my life savings. I had made a little bit of dough through some stock options at Intuit, and put it into a concept and a company of improving that situation, which is basically your physical and emotional and work and relationships and resilience, and all of that thing is well-being. And so it was not one of these ideas where it was, I saw a gap in the market and decided to build it. It was literally 100% personal.
Yeah. I want to go back to your conversation real quickly about burnout, because I want to make sure that none of my team members are burnt out, or as people are listening and thinking, how do you recognize it? How soon after you realized you had kind of become burnt out did you look in the mirror and say, I don't recognize this person? Was this like a year or like a month? Like, how do you know if you're burnt out?
There's a way to talk about it, exhaustion and depletion, that you can think of. Like, if you took 3 days off and all you did is go sit by a pool in Palm Springs and you still don't feel replenished when you come back, that's a level of exhaustion and depletion that would be indicative that maybe you're headed in the wrong direction. And then when you start showing up at work and you start the things that you used to be optimistic about, or, I like this challenge. What if we did this? I wonder if we could get other resources to apply to this challenge or problem. If you lose that creativity, I would call that cynicism. So those to me would be the clues. And once you're cynical, cynicism looks at work like when you see 5 people going to lunch and you just know that they're kind of talking bad about their boss or the company. Bueno. And it's like, why? Or when you walk up to them, hey, what are you talking about? What are you people working on? And they're like, They
Yeah.
kind of get quiet. That's cynicism to me. That's the best way to think about cynicism, is when people stop talking when you walk into the room.
If there's a CEO listening that's like, hey, I'm really good at product, I'm really good at fundraising, I'm good at this, I'm not great at inspiring my team, or I'm not great at engaging or managing actively my team, what could they be doing, or what have you learned along the way that people can do to keep their team members engaged?
Well, I definitely don't think I'm God's gift to this. And I would say if I'm even decent at it, it wasn't the case 14 years ago when I started the company.
What was the model when you started it?
I've learned a few things in the last 4 or 5 or 6 years that have helped me be decent at that. But I think anyone of any personality type can be inspiring if they just let their true selves out and be humble and be excited about what the problem that they're working on. You see CEOs who I think of incredibly inspiring, who are extroverted or introverted, who have a quiet voice or have a loud voice. So to me, it's just about, is it real? Does it come from a place of real passion and energy? And
just
that's the most important thing. Sorry, did I interrupt you?
Well, no, I interrupted you, which is what I will be doing for the next.
Let's just do it.
We just interrupt on top of one another. Okay, so I'm just curious. So you said you were a guy, you took your savings from your Intuit money and you said, I'm going to start this thing. What was the thing?
The idea was that you can use statistical methods of measurement to measure and help people improve every valid predictor of well-being. So to do that, you have to think about, well, what is the science of measuring people? It's called psychometrics. And who does it? Usually psychologists or organizational psychologists. So I Googled psychometrics. Actually, I LinkedIn psychometrics, and there were only 3 people on all of LinkedIn that had that in their profile. And one of them had a 425 area code, which is great because that's the East Side in Seattle. And I called that person. That person said I cost $750 an hour. So that was out. And I said, great. So who's the best person you've ever worked with on this? And he said, Laura Hamill. She works at Microsoft. She's working on psychometrics, and she designs surveys that Microsoft does for excellence and employee engagement and poll surveys and capabilities surveys, et cetera.
This was 14 years ago?
This is 14 years ago. And I talked to Laura, and as it turns out, she was going through the exact same kind of burnout I was, only in addition to, kind of minor issues in her life, she also was starting to suffer from what she considers stress-induced chronic diseases as well. So I think it really hit home that there's a strong connection between your life at work and your well-being. And so to me, concepts of employee engagement and employee well-being are not separate topics. They're part of a continuum of kind of thriving as a human being at work and in life.
Mm-hmm.
Did I take that in a different direction?
No, not at all. I'm more just curious because it seems like the business has started to pivot in the last few years a little bit, although it sounds like it's in your mind not pivoting, but more kind of building on itself.
Yeah, and I would consider it kind of coming back to the first principles of what we were doing. We think that the best companies in the world are ones that show care for their employees, and employees can learn how to take care of themselves in that journey as well. And so I think there's this whole movement in the market towards employee experience and its connection to customer experience, and how people, when they're at their best and they're cared for and thriving, actually do better for their customers.
Oh, of course.
And that's kind of what we started the company as, is how do you help people thrive so that their companies can thrive, and vice versa? How do you show care for human beings at work? And we believe that, well-being, inclusion, employee engagement, how you communicate with people, how you align everything to your values and have an intentional culture, they're all very related topics. So we feel like we're kind of coming home to how we started the business in the first place.
And so did you find co-founders after you had the idea, or just went out and found employees?
Yeah,
and
so
how did you raise money? All of that.
Yeah, Laura Hamill, I mentioned.
Yeah.
I consider a co-founder, as well as Eric Rivas, our chief technology officer. Also found through LinkedIn. So props to the social network. That was, I think we were early members of that system a long time ago. Funding was challenging. I think who wants to, in a recession, how many people want to invest in kind of a speculative SaaS platform focused on well-being?
Right.
as opposed to cost cutting or helping you negotiate better prices from vendors, et cetera. It was a very expansive, optimistic story in the heart of a kind of a dark time in the U.S. economy.
Right.
So, yeah, it was really hard, but luckily we have a great social support system here in Seattle for entrepreneurs, and we probably took 400 or 500 meetings with angel investors and found 50 or 60 that believed what we believed and were great supporters. Yeah.
And what would you tell a young entrepreneur
That's
now?
A ratio. I mean, I consider it pretty good. But
I know it is. It's just a lot of. It just sounds exhausting. So,
Yeah.
did you find that process obviously not enjoyable, 400 or 500, but that kind of athlete in you, the win of when the money comes in, you're like, yes.
Yeah, except most of it was already spent. But yeah. I mean, there were times we had an outsourced kind of finance CFO type organization that came and said, you should absolutely shut this down. You know, it's not working. It's not going to work. You've spent years on it and, you know, you don't have the traction to show for it. We had a term sheet with the venture capitalist that was signed and all the diligence was completed. And the day the check was supposed to show up, it just never showed up. And we couldn't make payroll and we had to do some desperate borrowing to keep people around and make payroll. So I would say, like, where do you learn that? That's a sports learn. I mean, that's like, hey, you're down 18 points going into the fourth quarter, but you have to win to move on. So to me, that was a well-being moment. You know, some of the topics in well-being are resilience and optimism and sense of team and belief in your purpose. Those drive human well-being. Those also drive kind of survival in a startup world. So yeah, we
well, and
survived.
also your leadership style, the optimistic leadership style, and your ability to lead kept people there, right, through that.
Well, I wouldn't. Our team all has that, and I wouldn't take too much credit for that. But I would say, yeah, if you're working at a startup, whether you're the CEO or a co-founder or the first software engineer or designer or whoever it is, I see that that's what exists there. It's just hustle and belief, and it's a terrible idea until it's a good idea.
And did you have the same philosophy and the same vision as your co-founders the whole time, or were you ever kind of on different pages as far as where you were going with the business?
Well, I think it's rare to go through 14 years without a few arguments and disagreements along the way. So I wouldn't say perfect alignment, but I also think it's extremely rare that you're still working with people that much later. And the three of us still work together. So that's great. I mean, you know, people have come and gone, and those people have made incredible contributions. And we can't make, we wish everybody the best who's passed through the doors. But
yeah, well, I'm sure they got a lot out of it too, and things that they've taken with them to their next company, right? That they can say, like, how do you emulate that? A company that's 100% focused on wellness and engagement. Obviously a great place to work. What are you kind of losing sleep over now?
Losing sleep. I actually sleep okay, but I would say, you know, to me, happy customers is what drives every great company, period. So I think we have happy customers, but I still stress about it.
How do you measure their happiness?
We have various scores. We have Net Promoter Scores, we have satisfaction scores, we have other metrics like, are people using the product? We have our app store rating is, you know, always critical for us to look at. Please look at it. It's pretty good. But still, I think also our business, as we evolve and we talk about a broader employee experience that we can influence, oftentimes we have customers who bought our software 4 years ago on a I would say a smaller promise, just about what I would call corporate wellness, which is absolutely part of what we do. In fact, I consider we've doubled down on it, but mainly by trying to provide a broader solution that more people participate in and use, and ties to some very related statistical concepts like engagement and inclusion. So, but you have to bring people along to that.
What is the current exact business model, and what is the current ideal customer?
We sell software as a service, employee engagement, well-being, inclusion, and communications. Those are 4 different modules that you can buy standalone or together. So I would think of it broadly as culture-building software for large employers. The sweet spot for us is between 5,000 and 100,000 employees.
So just
or more.
the large enterprise.
Yeah, large
Those
enterprise.
are hard to get over the finish line.
They are, and I think that it's more of a psychographic segmentation. We're very evenly spread across all industries, public sector, manufacturing, retail, technology, etc. But I would say we have a great concentration in companies who either are or aspire to be great places to work and win those awards for culture. And they see a connection between treating their people a certain way and ultimately their profitability. Where we don't do as well is companies who want to grow, let's say, only by acquisition with more of a financial mindset of cost takeout, increased, M&A and cost takeout as a sequence, more of a financial business. Not as well there versus an operational business, if that makes sense.
And why
you
not small to medium size?
I forgot to
I did
answer,
too.
But let's just move on.
Let's just keep going. So what about the small to medium sized companies? Why can't they be on your platform? Or they can, but why is not the
this
target?
ties to your earlier question, actually, which is, isn't it super hard to get these companies across the finish line?
Oh, yeah,
right?
these enterprise.
And so I would say half of the answer is this: having a sales and marketing engine that's optimized for selling to big companies is a huge barrier to entry. So we've built this over, a long time to know how to market to, generate leads from, process those leads, give great demos, and sell to large employers. I think that's a whole set of skills that is so easy in the world of product-led marketing, which we also want to have product-led growth, but it's so easy to overlook how hard it is for these enterprises to buy too. I mean, having some empathy, like if you work at 100,000 person company, it's hard to get new solutions in through the privacy, security, purchasing, all of the global.
Are you selling into procurement or HR?
Procurement plays a role. HR, talent buyers, benefits buyers. Every buyer has their own unique challenge and opportunity to work with. So I would just say we have a great competence in that. Having not just the product capabilities, but a whole different sales and marketing engine. Yeah. Maybe it'll happen someday. Maybe it won't. But right now we have just started cracking the.
Well, I would say you're also early to this field, to this area, right? It's progressive. Like now everyone talks about engagement, but you're definitely, that's the word, the pioneers. It's late in the evening for those of you who don't know, whenever this comes out. We're late.
We're punchy.
We're punchy right now. But so I'm thinking because my husband's in the same industry. It's like people are like, huh? What do you do before? And now it's like, so do you have competitors?
Yeah, we have competitors. I was going to actually reminisce back to 2009 and 10. We closed our first angel round, after a few years of trying at the start of 2010. And people would laugh us out of the room. I mean, we would talk about things like mindfulness and resilience and optimism, in addition to stress and depression and alcohol consumption and smoking and nutrition, but and employee engagement, sense of team. They would just say, "What are you talking about?
It sounds like soft,
are
fluffy.
Are you just crazy?"
Yeah.
And so we've spent a long time connecting those ideas to hard ROI in terms of employee turnover, in terms of safety and incidents and sales and other things like that. So there was a ton of skepticism that those things were crazy. Now, I mean, I could probably list 5 or 10 apps for resilience and mindfulness, each of which has 20 million in revenue, maybe 100 million.
Yeah, and you can't open a business magazine without that being right in there and it's front and center.
No, if you look at the last 20 covers of Harvard Business Review,
for sure,
I bet 3 have been about happiness, well-being, and 3 have been about inclusion and diversity, and 3 have been about attracting and retaining millennial talent.
Yeah.
Like it's all
same thing in my industry, because it's 25 years in the talent industry. The things that people are finally getting, like engaged. Great, we can hire them, but what about keeping them?
Yes.
And keeping them engaged. I have to say, I do not see a lot of resumes out of Limeade. I'm just telling you. I've got a finger on the pulse of kind of movement, and it seems like you've been able to keep people pretty engaged and happy.
Yeah, knock on wood.
Yeah.
We have turnover like any company.
Well, of course.
But sometimes it's good to help people pursue their dreams too. I mean, if we have someone who's doing a great job, but they have a dream that's bigger and better, that's going to fulfill them, we're happy to coach them through that process and get them to their dream job. We don't want a lot of turnover. We certainly it can be extremely costly, which is our whole ROI. But I think there's a time and place for good turnover as well.
For sure, for sure. And so when you set the intention for the company, I'm sure that you were really mindful and deliberate about setting your company values. Are those the same values today, or do you kind of revisit them all the time?
We have revisited them. We actually started with at a pub writing down what we wanted to stand for, and the underlying ideas were edited a little bit into our values. But on the napkin, it might have said things like, follow science and practice what we preach and all that. So we've turned it into our 6 core values, which are be it, own it, we're a team, speak plainly, delight our customers, and anything is possible. And my favorite's the last one because that to me embodies that. We've been told no our whole lives, and keep bringing it.
Is this an unfamiliar feeling for you to be the underdog? Because your resume and background is very much like, it sounds like you've been like, hey, are you it?
I mean, you could put me, with straight A's at all the number 1 schools in the country, and I would still have a chip on my shoulder. That's just how I'm wired, probably because how I grew up.
Yeah. How do you go about recruiting when you're thinking about your values? I mean, how do you even measure that when you're interviewing people? Like anything is possible.
Our values actually flow through everything we do in our people process. So how we interview, how we onboard, how we compensate people, how we hire and fire and promote people, everything is operationalized in the values. So we actually would have a set of questions associated with anything is possible.
Mm-hmm. Like what?
In our interview guide.
I'm like, give me some nuggets.
Like, tell me a time when everybody thought you couldn't do something, but you found a way to do it anyway, or to do something totally different that solved the same problem. To me, that's like a relentless optimism type thing.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a set of questions, and we assign different values to different interviewers, and we make sure that we're interviewing along those. Now, interviews are hard. You also have to look at, it's hard to form an opinion in 5 hours with someone. So you also have to look at what the track record is.
For sure.
Like,
and just even how they made decisions.
This person came from this background to achieve this much. There must be some resilience in there somewhere. So to me, an interview is part of a process.
Mm-hmm.
We have great recruiters. They are like constantly blowing my mind at how they find people who might have a slightly unorthodox background but are perfect for the job.
Sometimes those are the best ones, right? That you're like,
they have
think
chips
outside
on
the
their
box.
shoulders too.
Sometimes, definitely. And so I'm switching gears a little bit because we could talk about Limeade for a long time. I'm very interested in this conversation to talk about you, the person, like outside of work. We talked about how you kind of relax with the sports, and you've got 3 kids.
3 children.
3
Alexander,
children.
Josephine, and William.
Nice names. Yeah. Those are good ones.
Alex, Josie, and Will.
Alex, just met Albrecht.
16 by the time this airs, and 12.
Nice. And so which one of them is most like you?
Oh my gosh, she would kill me if
Poor
she
Josie.
heard this, but luckily she probably won't because she's in high school.
She's busy.
She's the one who reminds me the most of myself. She has a little...
that little
attitude
edge.
with this, 16-year-old daughter, as
is she a
many
hooper
of our listeners
like you?
know. She's a hooper. She's a lacrosse player.
Nice.
She plays a little tennis.
Are any of them not athletes?
She's dynamic and lovable.
Just like you.
Well, thank you.
Are any of them not?
I don't think I was that low. You knew me in high school. I don't think I was that lovable in high school.
I remember thinking you were cool and fun.
Thanks.
Right? Well, boring is not for everybody.
Okay, good.
Right? Well, I would not have put you in the not lovable.
I'm sure I could have been nicer at times to certain people.
You weren't mean to me.
Okay, good. So Josie's probably the most like me.
And so how are you raising them differently than how you were raised? It's definitely a different time, and you're an entrepreneur.
Yeah, I think I'm sure I'm repeating some of the mistakes of the past. I work a lot. I'd love to be home more. But when I'm home, I try to, give them hugs every day, tell them I love them all the time, and probably annoy them a little bit with that.
Yeah.
But if that's one thing I can leave my kids with is that I love them and I'll always love them no matter what.
Yeah.
That's probably,
love.
That's like 51% of parenting.
Oh, yeah. Giving them a safe place to feel loved unconditionally is huge. Think about how many people didn't have that. That's actually really makes me really sad when I hear those stories. And so what kind of qualities do you most hope that they have?
I just hope they become who they are and find out who they are. I think studying in a more business and academic sense these concepts of well-being and engagement is, I want them to find something that is a good fit for them. I don't care if they volunteer or if they're school teachers or if they're business people or athletes or artists, or I know there's a role for everyone in the world if you just follow your, what you want to do. And to me, you have to try a bunch of different things to do that. I'm a huge believer in, having a span of educational topics and liberal arts education where you have to take history and literature and arts and math and science all together, foreign languages. I'd love to see a little travel.
You have to come to my house because my kids are like, why am I learning this? Where does this apply to my life? And I'm trying to explain it. And they're like, do you remember this, Mom? I'm like, the Iliad, the Odyssey. I'm like, no, but yes.
No, but I'm a better person for having had to suffer through it. I think I'm a better person.
Yeah, no, it's good. So the ultimate question that I ask everyone is really, what fuels you?
I should have prepared. That's the name of your podcast. You'd think I would have thought up something really pithy.
But that's okay. You could say something like, not so pithy. I love that word. Clearly English major?
Yeah, I was an English major.
Do you still write, by the way?
Not much, no. I do a lot of
that could be what
I do a lot of work writing.
Yeah, work writing. I'm terrible at that.
I'm still fueled by learning. I would be lying if I said I didn't like to win. So I still like winning, but to me, it's actually not about the winning. It's about the journey of trying to reach your potential or do something really cool.
I love that.
When I think back on my college basketball days, which I think back fondly on, I had great teammates. The winning and losing is not what I remember fondly. It's the practice. It's showing up in like that nasty, sweaty, dirty, dusty gym with your homeboys and just playing ball and trying to be the best you can. And I get that same feeling, sounds weird, but like from a great English paper or from solving an econ problem that you didn't think you could solve.
Yeah.
Just the striving and the learning. One of the sayings that always sticks with me as resonating with who I am is being in the game. Like, I'm not a big tat guy, but if I had one, it might say that, because being in the game means you put yourself in the game. You did the prep, you did the hard work, and then it's up to you. And I think there's a lot of creativity in being in the moment.
I love that, being in the game, just like being 100% into whatever it is that's in front of you. And, the learning is huge.
Yeah, and you see this in every walk of life. You see, police officers, you see crossing guards, you see school teachers. I see some of the teachers that my kids have had or that I've had where it's just so obvious they love teaching and learning that they're there, and
they're in the game.
Nurses and caregivers who they literally want every moment to be great for the patients they're serving. And I just love when that shows up and you see it, and it actually, people are positive, even if they're in negative circumstances, because they're rolling up their sleeves and putting in their work.
I do like doing this podcast in moments when I get like inspired to write stuff down, because I love the in the game thing. It's not one of my company values, but I'm stealing it as like a thing that I'm going to think about. So I appreciate it.
It's also about being in the moment too, which is hard for all of us.
It's so hard.
Yeah.
It's so hard.
I tend to be very future
oriented. Are you in the moment
oriented.
right now?
Now I am right now.
Are you focused?
Yes.
You're in the game and in the moment?
Yeah.
I'm pretty focused on the future too. I'm not a past person as much. Yeah.
Not me neither.
Yeah. So what are you thinking for the future? And then I'm going to let you go because you're on kid duty, right?
Future. I just like to have a positive impact. There's probably a lot of ego in that, I want to be known as having a positive impact, but really deep down, I like interacting with other people in a way that leaves us both in a slightly better mood. And, professionally, if our software can over time make the lives of 100 million people 1% better, that would be really cool. And
super powerful. And
even if it's not 5% or 10%, but the just the butterfly flapping its wings effect of people having just an extra 10 minutes of positivity a week, or, an extra high five from a coworker or something, That would be cool.
Would that be your like ultimate end game of like I succeeded in this specific company in Limeade?
Yeah, I think success is one of those words that once you define yourself as a success, you sound really arrogant and annoying.
And like dead.
Yeah, and dead. Yeah, like, yeah, I guess that would be good to have on my tombstone, but I would hope that there's other things that I can get involved with or learn about as well.
Yeah.
I mean, we're all fundamentally ignorant, and no one person can, no matter how much they know, really be as educated or
there's always someone
learned
smarter
as they want to be. Yeah.
Yeah, we never have enough time, but I really appreciate it. Seriously,
thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's so great to see you.
So
and
good to see
so
you.
awesome that you're doing this podcast.
Yeah.
Everyone should listen because the next person after me is going to be super interesting.
You're very interesting.
Oh, thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the What Fuels You podcast. Be sure to subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes, Google Podcasts, or Spotify, and follow us on social media to keep up with the latest news and episodes. You can also contact us at podcast@fueltalent.com to provide feedback, ask questions, and share topics or guests you would like us to cover in the future. We hope you feel inspired by our guests and that we have helped fuel your day. Join us next time for another episode of What Fuels You.